Dave, I've got to mention one of the things over the years, and you coached major junior hockey. I don't know that the scholarship program was in place for the Western Hockey League in your time, was it?
Let me tell you something, Wally.
Okay.
We started that program. Now it's great, changed greatly, but I was coaching major junior. We moved the Calgary Centennials down to Billings, Montana in the Western Hockey League. And we realized we had a challenge for players to, we were a long way from our closest game was 350 miles. That was Lethbridge. And so almost 400 miles actually to Lethbridge. So we realized getting kids down there, we'd have to find some ways to enhance it. We also knew that a lot of stats told us that less than 1% of our guys we were going to deal with were going to make it. So we started a program where every year a player played for us in Billings. We gave them $500 to their education. So for every year they played, they got, it wasn't a lot, but in those days it was pretty decent, $500. So a player at the end of his career, if he played 3 years and didn't go pro, we paid him $1,500 towards his education. So we started that program, and it's become really under the guidance of people like Ron Robison and people like that. It's become really quite good. And these guys now go to school with very good scholarships from the Western Hockey League. And I always felt that was such a tremendous thing. The owners didn't like it. I remember when we did it, the owners in the league were ticked. They weren't happy because they were looking at the bottom line, how much money they could make with major junior. And we were going to have another cost thrown in front of them because to compete with us, they had to do the same thing. So we started that back in 1977, 78. I think it was. Probably you guys weren't born. Some of you guys weren't born then. But anyway.
I don't think I was.
Oh, yeah.
We all were.
Started that wall, and I think now it's really tremendous. Like I look at the Canada West Hockey Conference, and to see so many major junior players, ex-major junior players now going to school and having the funding to do so, it's really encouraging. In my era, a lot of our players, and you know yourself, you coached in Western Hockey League, Wally, for a time as well. A lot of your players in those days that didn't make it, they went into the workforce. They didn't have an education to fall back on, and now they certainly do. So it's a real good thing.
That's a great story. I had breakfast with the coaches of the Billings team in Billings one time. Maybe, I don't know if you were there or not. And we talked hockey for about an hour and a half, and it was pretty cool. I'm told that by one of the owners of the BCHL team I scout for, the NCAA they're negotiating. The Western Hockey League is negotiating with the NCAA to give those kids eligibility at NCAA schools in the United States, maybe as early as next year, even though they're pros. But now that with NIL in the U.S., they're pros also. I mean, they're all getting paid money.
That's right.
So a lot of things are going to change.
That's very interesting, Hal. I think that's, I agree with you. When I watch NC2A football, and a recruit out of high school has got a $13 million deal from a football collective at the University of Miami, wherever it was, it does make me wonder why we have some archaic rules. And I think a lot of the kids, that would certainly be a terrific benefit to a lot of youngsters. And obviously, you'd get kids, I think, can try other options and still go to school later. And that's anything we can do to keep kids playing the game at that level, at that age, I think is really good. So
I agree.
That's good to know.
Dave, down the road, I wanted to get Alan Andrews on from PEI.
Sure.
And my primary purpose in getting him on, he's experienced working with young children that have become superstars.
Yes.
And he's always encouraged every young player to have a dream beyond the dream.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, always strive to be the best you can be. And of course, in hockey, that would be the NHL. But in preparing his student players at the ages of 6 to whatever, his hockey schools, he really prepared them for the lives they were going to live, but use sports as a vehicle to develop the intangible qualities and the work ethic and the respect you need to become the best you can be. And I'm wanting to get him on as a guest at a later date. His health is up and down a little bit, but the primary purpose of that call is talking about the kids that became super athletes or super people in life, doctors, lawyers, whatever, but Crosby, McKinnon, and talk about their upbringing and the importance of the family and the values and the way they were raised, that just became a part of their DNA and their leadership when they took a job or when they played in the NHL and sustained their careers there and make a big difference. So I'm looking forward to that down the road. The scholarship program, when I was coaching that 1 year or 2/3 of a year season, and in Calgary, I had a manager, John Chapman, who was recruiting a player who was not going to play. He was going to go to SAIT. And he said, Cozy, we got to get this kid. We're going to guarantee him a scholarship. He's only got 1 year left, but we're guaranteeing him 4 years of university if he comes back as a 20-year-old. And the kid's name was Mark Tenorti.
Yep.
And I didn't know about Mark, but he did come back. And we had a contract owing him 4 years of education for that. And John said, hey, we don't have to worry about the scholarship. He's going to play. And I just took, I accepted his decision, and he brought him in. And of course, Mark, we were getting near the end of the season, and being in Calgary, John asked, we weren't getting, he wasn't getting any feelers for anything out from back from feedback from NHL teams expressing an interest in him. So we arranged a meeting with Cliff Fletcher to try to sell. Geez, we've got this player, and John's a very good scout. He ended up becoming Philadelphia scout, and I remember going to the office with him trying to convince them to take Tenorti. And of course they didn't, but eventually Mark did play pro a number of years and played in world championships as well. He wasn't one of those that took advantage of the scholarships.
Right.
But that was the era of, keeping players interested in playing at the highest competitive level they could.
Right.
And last night's game, when Mount Royal University played the University of Calgary, all of the players had played in the Western Hockey League, and it was amazing. I'm watching them play and saying, 4 years of education, and they're young men already.
Yeah.
20 years old. They're going to come out of there so much the better for having done what they've done. It's a price to pay. They sacrificed a lot, but I know so many of them today that are doing great things, and they're parts of the alumni of the University of Calgary.
Yeah.
That have gone on and played pro hockey, that haven't, but boy, the things they're doing, the leadership they're providing, the kind of quality people they are, they're sort of the fabric of the communities that they live in. So
Right.
I think the sport does great things for people, and that's what we're all about here at this little group. And I'm always, Dave, referring to what I've learned from you, and I always bring your name up. And of course, they don't understand the value of what we learned from having to play against the Soviets. They
Mhm.
made you better coaches,
No,
especially without the puck.
for sure.
I've,
Absolutely.
I've got to share with you at the U, with all of our girls hockey teams and girls hockey Calgary. I last week I did an ice session on your progression, D zone scrimmage, 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3. And I'm trying to convince them because all the skills coaches all their coaching is offense, create offense, create offense.
Mm.
And yet you play without the puck so much, you have to get it back to keep it.
Mhm.
Getting it and defending, to me, precedes possessing.
Mhm.
And uh, I have a U13 coach, the staff I did it with really appreciated it, but it's a little bit more difficult sell as you move up the ladder because, and like you've experienced watching, um, you know, you're coaching in the NHL, you've seen the offensive focus.
Mhm.
And it must have been difficult for you to pay attention to the defensive details that we learn to appreciate more than anybody else.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I should tell you a little thing, a little, that's a tip or what it is, but um, when, when I first learned the importance of defending was on many occasions when we had the puck offensively and we uh, were dispossessed by a good checker or a bad decision, whatever it was. And those moments we were so vulnerable because we had committed to attack and suddenly everything changed and we were without the puck and we had to defend. So it made me realize way back in my career that if you can dispossess a team from the puck in some of those key moments where they're playing with some risk, that is where you really get your best offensive opportunities from. So I've always really stressed with our guys, well, whether you're talking defense to offense or offense to defense, then the number one thing is anticipation. If you can see it's happening a second or two before it actually happens, that allows you to start your transition to whether it's defense to offense or offense to defense. And that's what the game is. The game is momentary, reoccurring momentary transitions in roles from attacking to defending. So, I learned a long time ago that we got a lot of our great scoring chances because we were really good defensively. We wouldn't have the puck as much as maybe the Soviets and the Czechs and the Swedes, but we got them in situations where we really worked at defending our blue line, for example, because we knew that that was a moment when teams get really vulnerable. Around your net, sometimes they attack with too much zest and get caught deep. So, I learned a long time ago that number one thing is good defense and defending at critical moments where the puck is up for grabs a little bit in terms of possession. That's what it's all about. And it all comes down to that word we always hear about in the game is anticipation. The best players are always still a couple of seconds ahead of everybody else in seeing what's going to happen. Not what's happening, what's going to happen. And, I've always, that's why I've always tried to get guys that are, I've really found it's more fun coaching smart guys than it is dumb guys. So, and that's one of our jobs. Our jobs is to, I've always, and you did it very well, Wally, when you coached. I'm sure Tom does it. I'm positive does it. Understanding of the game. I'm going back to what I talked about before. That's the number one thing I've learned in my coaching is if people understand what you're trying to do, they're going to execute it better. It doesn't mean they're all going to be great at it, but they're going to be better at it. So, and that's the fun in coaching. I always found that the most fun was I still watch games with a pad and paper and write things down. I still look for those things. So, yeah, it's a great game. And I should tell these guys a story about you, Wally, with the national team. Wally would come out with this, maybe every week. I think it was Tuesday mornings. Wally would come out, and we'd always give Wally at least 15 or 20 minutes to work on some individual skill with the whole team. But I remember you did a thing on skating, defensive skating, and you think it's me. It's actually yours, that defensive skating. And it was amazing when it was all said and done. I remember talking to a guy named Paul Cavallini, who was a great big defense and played about 10 years in the NHL. And Cav was big, a little bit overweight at those times. And we tried to really push his fitness. He had slow feet. And you worked with him on checking, just skating specifics and checking situations. And I remember he came to me and he worked on those things. And he came to me and said, I'm not faster, but I skate smarter. I know how to skate in something. I know what I should be doing in terms of my positioning and my skates and this and my edges and all that stuff. And so I learned a long time ago, Wally, having people like yourself, very valuable. And that's what coaching staffs are. I mean, you are a staff. You've got a number of different people with different skill sets, different approaches to the game, different view of the game. And that's what makes the game so exciting for a coach, is to be able to draw upon those resources,
Well, Dave, were it not for that opportunity to work with those players, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to encourage it with young players and the coaches of the young players, because I valued the result. And I remember when you were coaching the Flames, you had me do some skill work, similar work with their defense.
Yep.
And I remember I had about 20 minutes at one end, and I did the same thing I did with Paul. And after one of he was a coach, played in the NHL, came down. He was a defenseman. I just wish I could remember the name off the top of my head. He was blown away because nobody's taught those things.
Yeah.
And nobody's learned to teach those things because they never had to.
Right.
It was all trial and error.
Yeah.
So when we were faced with the adversity and the challenge of playing against players that were so much faster, agile, move the puck quicker, we had to learn how to skate.
Yeah.
And I often tell the story when you asked me to go over to the first Spengler Cup with George Kingston and Andy Murray.
Yeah.
The first ice time, George did a double regroup drill on the European ocean ice, and they couldn't do it. The defenseman could not create gaps, complete passes, forwards had trouble timing, but the defenseman had so much trouble double regrouping, skating forwards and backwards. And I asked George, and thank goodness George was open-minded. I said, George, just give me 10 or 15 minutes with the D. And we worked on transition skating, deliberate, progressive, mundane, but important stuff. And we went back to the drill. They did the drill. And the players that Paul Henry had selected, we had 10 college players, 5 from the US, Canadians, 5 from Canada, and then the others were European pros. Right. And I think you told me going over, don't be too wishful about results. But that team won the gold medal of the Spengler Cup, which was, really an overachievement and somewhat of a shock. But that aspect of being able to play the European game on big ice and knowing how important those little details are, that's one small piece of contributing to it. So we've learned a lot, and I just think all we want to do is make sure it gets passed on to coaches that are going to continue. So the benefactors, it's going to be the kids. So
I think, Wally, I guess the last thing, if you're getting ready to draw this thing to a conclusion, but I still, in my coaching career, the one outcome that I look back with some regret was I was at a young age, I think technically pretty good and tactically okay, But I don't think I had as much fun coaching as I should have had. I did at the University of Saskatchewan. When I got coaching after that for a few years there, I got way too focused, I think, and I didn't realize the importance of creating an enjoyment. We had a great work environment, and the guys realized they were getting better, and so they put up with me because of that. But I wish I'd been better with some of my players, better interpersonal with some of my players. At sometimes I was too focused on just them as players, not as people, and I think that's the biggest regret I have in my career. And after that, I started to change. When the best thing that ever happened to me was the chance to be an assistant coach. I'd never been an assistant coach, and I got in the NHL to be in that role. And I thought, God, this is great. I can talk to the players, have fun with them, and enjoy them, and work with them and one-on-one, and it was terrific. So, I really think that's important for coaches at any level, to make sure you're having fun, because if you're having fun, you'll do a better job. You'll be more committed to it, and you'll help your kids get better. And whether they make it or not, that won't be you'll deal with that, because you're seeing a bigger picture. And I really think that was the one thing that I learned. I wish 15 years earlier, when I coached the U of S, I had great time with my players, but then I got this reputation being so good technically and tactically that became my identity, and that was a mistake for me. I'm glad I snapped back into it and got a chance to realize the basics of coaching and working with kids at any sport is enjoyment for you and for them. And so let's always take that message. You always done that, Cozy, and I like that so much. I've always felt that you were a voice in the dark with Hockey Canada. I remember when I left, we had great conversations with you about, like working with people, proper methods to work with young players. And I felt you were sometimes talking to people in Hockey Canada and they weren't listening. They were so interested in other aspects of working with kids, technical, tactical. And I felt you were the first guy to kind of make a lot of us start to think, whoa, let's hang on here. So, Wally, you've done a great job. You're quietly one of the best hockey people I've ever met.
Well, the same is true of my thinking of you, as you know. And I just want to thank everybody for coming on. Jordan, I'm glad you could sneak in. And Tom, of course, we've got a pretty significant group of people that we started pre-COVID, where we met for coffee in Calgary.
Right.
And then after COVID, it became a Skype call, and I edited it into chewable laps, chewable pieces. And the problem is natural. We're old. And, the older you get, the wiser you are, but yet it's just not connecting. And I think just we keep doing what we're doing for the right reason. We know our why.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned changing as a coach, I don't know, as a head coach, I didn't head coach enough. I got fired because I was too friendly. And, the art of coaching, it's the right stuff, the right amount at the right time. And
yeah.
I think head coaches, you've heard the good cop, bad cop scenario, coaching staffs and that kind of thing. And it's an art, and you get better at it. And the term sharks, no dead sharks, I think, as you know, you've got to keep learning and moving forward, swimming and breathing, which a shark has to do to stay alive. And that's what we want to do. And having you on, just another example to learn lessons from the past that they're so important now in the future. And I think the Hockey Canada closure, or possibly opener, that's happened with the problematic were created by world junior players. We have to take it upon ourselves as being responsible as leaders in the sport.
Right.
And although we're not governing bodies, we represent them and respect their roles, knowing how complicated they are. And we just want to continue to serve the good of the game, which is preventing that from happening down the road and making a much more positive experience for young players growing up. And as you said, Dave, and you've mentioned before, enjoying your coaching more.
Yeah.
Getting more satisfaction from the fact you can be with young people. And that's one thing I loved about teaching, Jordan. I never aged when I was in the school. You were always around kids, and it might be in high school from grade 9 to 12 in small town Saskatchewan. But, you know, when you were teaching in high school, 10 to 12, 3 years, a new cycle of kids came in, and you got to coach them like you did in high school sports for 3 years. Boy, the value of that, the satisfaction just from experiencing that, to me is paying off. So, thanks everybody for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
We've reached our 2 hours, and Dave, we're going to have you on again, and I'm going to edit this and promote it. And I want to promote your book from Russia, as well as the ice bags.
Loose pucks and ice bags, Walt.
Loose pucks and ice bags.
I'll tell you right.
I've talked to so many people about both books.
Yeah.
And I just want to rekindle the interest in everybody in referring to those things, because the stuff we're talking about hasn't changed.
That's right.
The teaching of skills.
I enjoyed my morning with you. Thanks, and keep at it. Keep having fun, you old sharks. And Wally, anytime. Just let me know ahead of time, and if there's a topic or something, a theme to it, let me know, and I'll do a little prep. Glad to be on.
Well, we'll get the Sharks to come up with a topic, that's for sure.